Hello, everyone, and welcome to Conversation with Friends. I'm Meredith Port, and tonight I have just a really, really special person in my life who's had a very big impact on me, and I feel it's just a wonderful thing. But I also know that journalist John Yearwood, continues to have an impact on the entire world. So whatever he does, it's affecting lots of people. You might remember that he was the world editor of the Miami Herald for many years, and that's when we met some years ago. But John is now the global editor for Politico. And I want to talk about that. I want to talk about the huge success that Politico has had over such a short time. It's really pretty much of a phenomenon. But most important, I mean, his work is just exceptional. Everything that he's done, he's traveled throughout the world covering stories for so many years. But even more important than all of that is the man and the person, really, that John Yearwood is. And that's what I'm thrilled to get to talk about tonight, because when he's not working and he's not covering stories, editing stories, interviewing people about stories, John Yearwood is doing lots of things to help the community, very quietly, very gently, but he's out there, and I see him as a in the best sense of the word, a community activist. So, John, it's good to see you. Though we do see each other a lot lately.
Meredith, it is such a delight to be with you. You are, as you were saying, that I'm special to you, and right back at you.
Well, we have spent over the years a lot of time, at different events that we've both been involved in together. And I remember the first time that I did meet you was actually, we're going to show a picture of it. I was planning to show it later on, but I think we should show it right now if we can get to it, is when we were doing something called Images and Voices of Hope. And that was about the power of the media, working with media and people in the arts to think deeply about how they could make an impact in the world. And that was considered kind of radical in those years, because there you are. And this was at the home of the Bee Gees. And you said, I'll come and I'll speak. And so there you were. We were told that it was 18 years ago. And that was Bonnie Anderson, who was an anchor for CNN, actually, and Ron Mangraviti with you. But there were many others who were who did talk that night. And I'm just wondering, what was your impression of, coming to an organization where, we were really speaking about what it is that people in the media could do to help the world and help their communities?
Well, Meredith, first of all, it's great to be on with you, and I've seen this show a few times, and I am always just thankful, not only for what I hear, but also for literally the light that you shine in this world. So thank you for that. Meredith, that you said when I was asked to come, I said, yeah, I'll come. But part of the reason why I said, yeah, yes, I'll come is because you were asking me to talk about something that I really love, which is talking about Africa. And in fact, I had done a lot of reporting on the continent. I'd been to the continent many, many times. And I felt strongly that there wasn't, and I still do, enough attention being focused on Africa in so many different ways. And I think I had done some work because I had just come to Miami. I did a lot of work for the Dallas Morning News from where I had come on Africa, particularly at the time Africa was going through its what we called at the time the Second Democratic Revolution. And then I thought it would be nice to come and talk about what was happening on the continent, and even more profoundly how the folks in the room who have huge networks, how they can be helpful. So it was a pleasure to come and talk about what was happening. But the other part of your question you touched on is what was my impression of the room, of the folks in the room at the time. And it was, I wasn't quite sure what to expect. I was coming to talk about Africa, but then there was such not only an intelligence in the room, but also a calm in the room, and part of the calm was because of the people in the room and their sense of their sense of the world, and also how, to some extent, also how to make a difference in the world. And it was, because I think that there was some meditation, I believe, even before and after. And I remember leaving that event and not only feeling really much calmer myself, but also thinking that this is a group I wanted to know better, and this is an organization that I wanted to be a little bit more affiliated with. And of course, the rest turned out to be history.
It's a lot of history. You have become so involved. In fact, Images and Voices of Hope, most people might not really know, merged with a national nonprofit, the Peace Studio, which is taking it to even another level, in terms of just being people in the media and the arts, really being able to think about how it is that they can really create a better world through their work and their life. Here we are with the executive director, Thomas West, you and me, after a big event we did at Big Brothers Big Sisters a few months ago. And there we were actually eating dinner and discussing the event. Here's some people that you have brought involved over the years. If you could maybe mention a couple of them right here.
Yeah, sure. This is one of the event we did for Images and Voices of Hope. I think this was at the Betsy Hotel.
Yes.
And we wanted to bring different people in the community together to talk about a number of different issues. And you're seeing my good friend Carl Juice from the Miami Herald there, and so many other special people in that photograph.
John, I have a very special memory of that night because Carl had such an impact on the audience, including my late husband. That was probably the last big event that he went to, that had to do with Images and Voices of Hope. And he got up. I've never seen him do this at any events over the years. He actually got up after hearing what Carl just had to say, and told him that he's doing wonders for the world, that he's an amazing man. And I again, Carl Just, who's, this amazing photographer who has just covered so many tragedies and difficulties and conflicts, right? And everywhere. And again, as you said, he's won the Pulitzer Prize. And so, we were always in search of, and you really have been in such connection with people like this. People that are, it's not a job for many journalists, most journalists probably is it. It really is. Would you say it's a passion or a calling? Can we call it a calling, going into journalism?
Well, yeah, I think that to some extent it's a calling that one would hope, as it did for me, it has for many others, become a passion. And then, I've always believed that, you should be passionate about something. And if you are passionate about it, then it, in many cases, it doesn't become work. It just becomes to you just following that passion. But it's interesting. There's that picture with Carl Juice, and it's interesting also what you said about Barry. He was so moved that he got up and spoke. Carl has been someone who has taught me so many lessons over the years, and one that comes to mind very easily. We shortly after we had all those hurricanes here in Florida, and Carl and I were talking about it, and he said something very simple, and something that I've lived with ever since. It's probably been at least a decade. He says that just be prepared, and if you're prepared for the hurricane, then you don't worry about it. And we were talking about hurricanes, but I've used that in so many other aspects of my life. I mean, it's like, if you're prepared for whatever the challenge is, then you don't really worry.
So it's the preparation and the really figuring out what it is that you need to do beforehand, precisely, rather than go into shock afterward. And
in the minute, exactly. And panic in the minute. Yeah, you just don't panic.
You don't panic. Yeah. And that's, we seem to be living though really, John, in a world of panicking, don't we? I mean, and that to me is what, what people feel about the news. And often, I'm not saying because there's so much good news and I want to talk about Politico and all the news, that it gives and everything. But it really is it's the world that just, because you've been in journalism for so many years, is the world speeding up with all of these issues. And it just seems to us, whether it's COVID or climate change, or, I mean, every minute, of course, Russia. I mean, is it just things are just moving faster than ever? And we do have to deal with all of these things. And I guess, as you say, maybe be more detached because maybe we can prepare for things in advance.
Well, Meredith, as to some extent, a student of history, and my knowledge of history is not super deep. I tell people that I know a little about a lot, but if my recollections are correct, the world has always been, to some extent, in some level of upheaval for going back as far as either of us can remember. And maybe as we get older, we get, we absorb it a little bit more as compared to when we were younger, and we're a lot more introspective about what we're going through and what we're seeing. But I don't deny the last few years have been really in its own way, very taxing, not only on the spirit, but also on the soul. And it's made a lot of people anxious for, and also to, and I think the media to some extent, Meredith, and being, a practitioner of the media, and as someone who has, you can't help but think that to some extent, the proliferation we've seen of the media has something to do with it. And I'm not just talking, when I talk about a proliferation of media, I'm not just talking about what when you turn on the TV every day, but it's now in so many different ways, and it's so pervasive in our lives. And to some extent, it's made a living for me, because at Politico, a lot of what we do is online, digital. But in everything you do, and with your iPhone and everything else, you just seem to not be able to get away from it. And I think when that's the case, it makes us a bit more anxious for longer periods of time.
Yeah. One of the things that I'm thinking about has to do with, again, with the Peace Studio now, which again, as I say, always merged with Images and Voices of Hope, is that and you've done a lot of work with journalists about this over the last few years, is telling stories in a different way, where there is hope, there is resilience. So not just scaring people all the time, I mean, you have to tell the stories, you have to tell the truth, right? But to give people something that leaves them with hope and a sense of maybe possibility. And so I was just wondering, maybe if you could speak to that, because you, as a longtime journalist, you understand this better than most people would understand this whole approach to news, news making, or covering the news, let's say, if it's possible, in terms of the kind of news that you're covering now at Politico.
Well, when you brought up the Peace Studio and the kind of narratives we were talking about, and we were trying to get more, and we're still in the process of doing that, trying to get more news organizations to come on board in terms of the type of journalism that we think not only would help the organizations, but help their journalists, and certainly help the people who are consuming their reports, where the stories are a bit more reflective. And so that when people read it, they can see, to some extent, it can give them hope that it's even in the most dire of circumstances. For example, one story I did many years ago after the earthquake in Japan, and the tsunami there and everything else, I was able to go and find some people, even though that they're living in these camps, but they were able to talk about, how their lives have changed, their things have gotten worse. They were not necessarily feeling that, that it's the end of the world for them. They were building on what they had suffered to some extent, and trying. In one case, one woman that I met and wrote a lot about, she was helping the community to heal, and I think that's those are the kinds of stories I think it's important for people to see and for people to read, because so much of what they're seeing and hearing and reading is sadly doom and gloom.
But in a sense, the journalists are the ones that are out there, like in these times of suffering, and you can almost be, the support system again, but you have to be detached, I understand, because you're covering news, but just maybe the feeling that you care or you listen to them. And I wanted to maybe bring up something that I did hear at one of our meetings at Peace Village, where we would have the summits. I think he was a journalist from the BBC, and he said that he was covering something, floods or something. And usually, he said in the past, he would kind of run after the story, find the person to interview. And what he did was he just stood there and kind of relaxed and more just calm. And people came up to him and wanted to tell their story because they wanted to get it out. They wanted somebody to listen to them. And he said it changed his whole way of reporting, because, rather than almost like attacking people, give me the story or tell me what happened to you, he was just there to serve and to help them. But, that he was also, of course, able to get his work done. So, I'm not saying that's possible all the time, right? But what you're saying too is that there are different ways to tell stories, and that maybe we all need to be more aware and to be more supportive when we hear stories of, what is the word with the of stories of possibility, right?
Restorative narrative is what we were working on at IVOH. One of the things that we did, and you mentioned, and I believe you mentioned Mike's working at the Miami Herald, and I did that for over 13 years. One of the things that that I coordinated was our coverage of the Haiti earthquake, which, it doesn't get much worse than that.
Worse.
But even in that, Meredith, there were some amazing stories we told about the power of the human spirit. And one of the things that wasn't the Herald that only wrote about this, but there were others that a few days after the earthquake, in the hills above Port-au-Prince, the women started to sing. They all broke out into song, and it floated down the hill. And it was the most, I'm still getting chill bumps as I describe it. It was, it was the kind of thing that even in the midst of this destruction and decay, you had this beautiful thing that happened, and it couldn't help in many cases of stopping people just for a moment to listen. And those are the kinds of things that one of the reasons why I'm still doing what I do in journalism, because you need to tell those stories.
Wow, that is it really makes you think in a different way when you can hear a story like this, or remember the experience I'm sure that you had, that even in the worst of times, like you say, suffering and pain, there is community, isn't there? There is, people rise to the occasion, and they are able to maybe just transcend the suffering and help each other. And, I've heard people say, I remember after the hurricane in Miami, which was nothing like what happened in Haiti, but I remember people saying that for the first time in all the years that they lived in their neighborhoods, when the fences were all destroyed, separating people, suddenly they felt like neighbors. People were helping each other and stopping by. And so something does happen when there are these times of, really difficult times that people have to face in life. So I was wondering, though, how do you as a journalist, and again, we've been at it a long time, how do you protect yourself though from the horrors? And I'm sure most journalists have to do some work on themselves, right? Not to, and you just mentioned it, that hearing the music had an effect, but is it something you have to just really be careful not to absorb any of the pain that you see that people might be going through?
Well, that's a really good question, Meredith. And the only thing I can say to that is that actually two things. One, I've been a journalist, as you mentioned, for a very long time, and started as a young kid reporter, if you will, covering murders and mayhem in different cities. It's like, that's why one reason why I tell young journalists, it's really important to get the fundamentals of our craft down before you start thinking about jumping into doing, being a foreign correspondent, for example, the day after you get out of school. And some people do it, but I think it's important because there are a number of things that you go through that prepares you, that prepare you for covering like a Haiti earthquake and what we've seen, what we've been seeing in a lot of major cities. But so I think that helped me. But the other thing that helped me, and particularly in the case of Haiti, and I know to some extent you may probably want to talk about this later, is you find something that you can hold on to. And in this case, I found the Haiti dance company, Aiko Dance, and out of that tragedy of the earthquake, we were able to work with them to really create something that's really beautiful, that not only people in Haiti can continue to enjoy, because it was a dance company that was literally a Haiti institution that almost went out of business. But we were able to work with them so that they continue their craft, and brought them to Miami, and in which what we were able to do for them in Miami to keep them going and to keep them alive. That's among the things that, when you're in the midst of tragedy and you're covering that, you find something that you can hold on to. And that's one of the things that I was holding on to, that we can help this company really not only survive, but also thrive.
And you did. And I remember this because you told me about it, and I came. I remember I got a ticket and I came. I was sitting right there near you, or in the same row or something, and the most amazing dance company, just absolutely amazing, their work. And what I remember hearing maybe from you was that it did give them hope, and coming to Miami, and that you helped raise a lot of money to bring them to Miami and to pay for their trip, and and for them to perform. And it really did turn around their lives and change their future. So I feel about you, and that's what I wanted to talk about, is that you always do seem to be there in a time of need to help people. And I've seen it with you many times. So, and I was wondering, is that something that you've developed over the years, or can we go back to your, maybe earlier years where you felt that's maybe also your role, either as a journalist or as just as a human being, or your responsibility to help others? I mean, I don't know that all people in journalism feel that way. A lot of them feel maybe they're just there to cover the story and tell the best story they can, but you seem to take it again to another level. And then I want to show some pictures of the past.
Well, that's a really good point, Meredith. And I think that I think that it's really often not about me. It's about them, and by them I mean the folks that I'm covering, the people who are going to be reading or interpreting what the messages that we're sending, and and I thought, particularly with Haiti, is there something that I can do in a small way to help make a difference? And that's so that's that's kind of what I did. And being a journalist, I was careful because I was literally in the news side of things, and the dance company was more in the arts, so I wasn't necessarily covering that. But I thought that it wasn't like I was rehabilitating a politician or something like that, which was really different. But in two ways I thought I could help. One, I was also very engaged in helping the journalists in Haiti, in which we raised almost $70,000 to help journalists. We got them computers, we got them backpacks, we got them tents, and those kinds of things. That was an overall effort under the umbrella. The Miami Herald pretty much took the lead, and we went to journalists all around the country to help the journalists who had really suffered underground. And then, of course, working with the city of Miami and our good friend, John Richard, then the CEO of the Arts Center. And by the way, none of this would have happened without John, because I went to John and I said, look, there's this great group in Haiti, a dance company. Maybe we can help. Can you take a look? And John said the most amazing thing to me. He says, take me to Haiti so I can see them for myself. And I did. And we went to Haiti, and we sat in outside as the Aiko Dance did a performance for us. And in fact, one of the reasons why we're sitting outside is because their dance studio had buckled during the earthquake, and we're really worried it was going to crumble at any minute. But they were there doing the best that they can. But you can still see their talent and their genius shine through. And at one point, John leaned over to me and he said, can you imagine this at the Arts Center with the proper lighting? And he could sit there and he could see it. And then he says, let's make it happen. And sure enough, he went out and he found the best lighting director of any dance company in the country, the lighting director of the Alvin Ailey dance company.
It was a magnificent night performance.
Which he brought to the Arch and did a great job.
Now here he is, right?
That's Jean-Guy, the artistic director of Aiko Dance. Yeah, that's one of our performances after one of Aiko Dance performances at the Arch with the incredible John Richard.
So I want to read something that John Richard that we found on your Facebook site, right? When we were announcing this program. This is him saying this, John Richards, right?
Yes.
Sorry, John Richard at the Arch Center, CEO of the Arch Center. Okay, John Yearwood opened my eyes, touched my soul, and helped me understand my job as CEO. I am forever grateful to his magical example of trusting others to do good and speak truth to oneself. His core being is a focused spotlight on humankind. And he said this about you on Facebook the other day. So look at the effect that you had and continue to have, on him and so many others, John. And I think that you really, you really are a true inspiration, to the world, and I'm sure to many journalists. And I'm sure that it's not always easy, life can be hard. We all have stresses, and especially you being, what you do at Politico, there's probably a lot of stress in the intensity of it. And I just wanted to bring up something else, but let's go to the pictures. We got a few more pictures. Oh, here, another good friend. You introduced me to him and got me involved in his cause. There he is.
Peter London of the Peter London Dance Company. Yeah, Peter London is a real genius, and he has had so many incredible experiences with people such as Martha Graham and others. And Peter came to me after my work with Aiko Dance, and he says, can you help my company? Because we had raised for Aiko Dance on that first visit to Miami, like $250,000 or something for them. It was really incredible. But and he says, can you help me? And I said, well, you know, I would love to help, but the fact is, that's not what I do. I'm a journalist. I'm not really into the dance thing. I mean, I wanted to help. I could dance because of the earthquake. And Peter, you know, bless his heart, he's consistent. I mean, and also persistent. And he kept coming at me and everywhere he saw me around town. And one day I was at an event with the diplomatic corps here and consular corps here in Miami, and a good friend of mine who has sadly passed away had told me about her love for dance, and I suggested, and this is the wonderful Victoria London, and I suggested that she and Peter should talk, and I said, Peter, talk to Victoria about what you're doing with the company. And Victoria turned out to be one of his biggest benefactors in terms of wrote him a very, very sizable check later that really has helped and probably pretty much has kept the dance company going, and is and it's now still around and still doing really fantastic work. And as you know, it was so great to see you a few days ago, Meredith, at one of their performances at the Miami Beach Botanical Gardens. And again, an example of you know, of the great work that they're doing, and the difference that one guy, in this case Peter, has been making in the city.
He is making an impact, and you got me involved with this company because now a couple of years ago, he asked me to be on the board after having a meeting with you, both of you. I did want to mention that you are both from Trinidad as well.
That's right.
Right. So
and that's absolutely true, and it was one of the reasons why Peter kept coming. He says, you know, help a fellow Trini.
How could you say no?
Of course,
nobody
in the
can
end,
say no.
I couldn't say no, and I'm glad that I did, and was able to do what small part let me just say, what I asked Victoria London later. I said, Victoria, why were you so generous to the company? And she mentioned to me that when she came from Romania with her husband working in New York, he was a diplomat. She had a good bit of free time, and she would go down to see the dance company perform, which is Alvin Ailey, and even going to rehearsals. And she said she fell so much in love with the work that he was doing. And she said every time she saw Peter London's company perform, whether it's a rehearsal or it's a large performance or a small one, her mind harped back to Alvin Ailey in those early days. And she said, he reminds me so much of what I saw then and what I fell in love with when I was seeing Ailey. And she said, I see the very same potential. I see the very same potential. So she said, anything I can do to help is what she was more than happy to do.
John, that's so beautiful. And I have seen it again and again with Peter London, is the effect that his performances and his whole being, the way he works and his way of just dealing with everything with his company, the great support and love he has for his young dancers. And I see people, they want to help. They just want to be part of it. And yeah, so just the fact that you were able to help him, and you said something to me once, you won't remember it. I said to you, but how do you do that? You know, you always, you seem to be able to always be successful with, getting the right support you need for different causes and different things. And you said something like, well, I just do it. I'm not thinking about it. Like, I don't think too much about it. Just do it and see what happens. If it works, if it doesn't. So it takes away that maybe anxiety often people feel. And sometimes I feel when I ask for something, but just ask, right? And the right people will show up, especially when they see that it's something so real and involves something so good in life. People want to help, don't they?
Yeah, they absolutely do.
They-
And to be honest, some people don't, and that's fine too,
Mhm.
because there's nothing that says you absolutely have to do anything you don't want to do. And you know, and that's good. But my dad said to me, and many years ago, he says, if you want something, or if you want someone to do something, just ask. And the worst that they would say is no. And then, although in Peter's case, he didn't take no for an answer, so he kept asking, which is good. But the key thing is that nothing's going to happen if you don't ask. So if you want something, ask for it, you know, and you know, and someone says no, and then you move on. You kept, you know, you kept going. I know one thing that I saw, you had a picture of me with President Mandela coming up. That was an interesting. That was interesting. That was in South Africa at his private residence, and we had, and to some extent, it's sort of framing to some extent for my life in terms of, because you mentioned earlier about you do things without seeking credit and those kinds of things, and I don't think credit for me is important, or even people knowing that I'm involved is even important. And part of the reason came out of this incident. I was in South Africa, and I was there as part of a group of journalists with a UN delegation that was covering the UN delegation's trip to South Africa. And the gentleman with the African outfit, Jibril Diallo, a very dear friend of mine from Senegal, he had been with Mandela when Mandela won the Nobel Prize, among other things, and the head of the UN office in South Africa had been arranging our trip, and he was trying desperately to get Mandela to see us, the head of the UN office, and he just couldn't do it. And we went to Mandela's office one day, and Jibril saw a good friend of his who happened to be Mandela's secretary. And she worked for him in Geneva many years earlier. And through that connection, we were able, and then she said the president, and Mandela was president at the time, he was in traveling to the south of the country, and he has to go back to Pretoria, but she'll arrange it so that he can come to Johannesburg and see us briefly before he goes off to then he was going to go to Cape Town. And sure enough, she arranged for us to be able to spend a couple just incredible hours with Mandela, and was the highlight, really remains one of the highlights of my life. But the part of the story that's important to me is that Jibril said to us, please allow the head of the UN for South Africa, please allow him to get the credit for arranging the visit. Please don't tell him that I had anything to do with this, because it's really not about me. It's about us being able to spend time with Mandela, and he's worked so hard on this. Please allow him to get the credit for arranging the visit. And that's what happened. And that has had an impact on me. And this happened, I don't know, probably 30 years ago or something. And that's just had an impact on me. Since then, for me, it hasn't always been about me getting the credit for anything. It's just is the result. Whatever came out of it, that's what's important. So when you talk about I've done these things, and often in the background, that's except in a case like this, where I was chair of the International Press Institute in Vienna, and I had to go, in this case, to Turkey to really stand with the journalists in Turkey, who many of whom were being thrown in jail under frivolous circumstances. And I had to stand with them, and I was speaking out about what the government there was doing to journalists.
I'm just sitting here watching all of this and I'm thinking, what a life that you have led and continue to lead, John. And I really get the feeling that you're almost like there at the right time to help. That's, what your life is all about, using your talent and your everything, your dedication to journalism and to really help the world, bring the world to a better place. And do you feel that you're actually magically put in places where you can meet the people that can make a difference, a bigger difference even, than maybe they were, or different.
That's an interesting observation, Meredith, but I don't really see it as much as that, because if anything, I'm just like a little pebble that you're dropping in the stream. I mean, sometimes it ripples, but because there's just so much to be done out there. There's just so, and a lot of people are doing it, and a lot of people are doing really fantastic work. And in small ways, that's I try to do what I can and use the various contacts I have when necessary to get some things done.
We would just jump to we were in Paris. There you were at a conference in Paris. So you're in one country after another. Can you tell me, there was something that I read when I was just going through information about you, and it was like in maybe one time of a few months, you were in how many countries? You'd gone to like 30 different countries in 3 months or something like that. And that's the way your life is, isn't it? You're always on the way somewhere.
Well, yeah. After I left the Miami Herald, one of the things that I did, I was giving speeches and moderating conferences around the world, and I can understand there were times, maybe in a month, where I went to a number of different places, and it was a lot. At one point, I was doing between 150 and 175, 150 and 75,000 miles a year. So it was a lot. It was, but then I go to things like the Conference of Paris, where I get a chance to sit down on the stage and talk to just incredible, brilliant, fascinating people. In some cases, the President Obasanjo of Nigeria, who happens to be one of my favorites, and I've seen him at different places in different parts of the world, where I've sat down on stages with him, interviewing him. He is, and when you sit down with an elder like that, you can't help but come out of that conversation so much smarter.
What I'm really getting from this entire really amazing interview with you, amazing because you're amazing, is that you just really are here to serve and to help others and to use, your talent, your skills, all of your experience to be able to serve others. And you do. It just, there's always something for you to, you go beyond what's just beyond your job or your responsibilities. And here we are again, another meeting. Could you maybe say words about this? Something we got to do?
We were preparing, Meredith, for an event in Miami, and this was interesting for a number of reasons. One, and I love doing projects with you because you're talking about me, but I can talk about you for a half hour about not only the people that the connections that you've made, just the spirit that you are, but we often try to get people together, and so many times we have said we'll have a small group of people together. We'll invite a lot of people, but thinking that we'll only get a small group, and that group will plan the event that we want to do. Well, and this was one of those cases. It just so happens that just about everybody we invited came. So the small group that was going to do the event, or the small meeting that we're going to have to plan the event, actually turned out to be the event because everybody wanted to be involved and everybody wanted to come. And that's one of the great things about being in Miami, that when you get the right people together, a lot of you get people saying, absolutely, let me, what can I do? How can I help? And that was a small part of that much larger group of people that came to the event that we had. It was a great conversation in which we were talking about how can we help do more and advance the work of the Peace Studio here in South Florida. And Meredith, and you probably will be talking about this at some point, but that the Peace Studio will be doing a lot more events. In fact, we have a major event coming up in the next month or so, next couple of months.
In July, I think. Yeah.
Here in South Florida. So that's good to see that we'll be doing a lot more here.
And after the event, we ended up at the meditation center for lunch. And I just want to say something about what you said about when you first came to one of the events about the, feeling the calm. And I wanted maybe to just speak to that's Veronica, who is runs the Brahma Kumaris Meditation Center in Miami and actually throughout Florida, who's very, very wise and very community oriented over many years. But that reflection has always been part of all that we do, whether it was Images and Voices of Hope and now the Peace Studio too. And the idea has to do with only then can you have to be in touch with your deeper, higher self, even for a few minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, something happens where you can begin to see more clearly, right? Is that how you feel about reflection, the importance of it at these events?
Oh yeah, absolutely, and I think you captured it there, Meredith. I mean, sometimes you have to be willing to just let go and let this higher spirit just take over, and it's always and not and Veronica is a master of it. The whole idea of reflective meditation, but also we did it when we had the retreat in upstate New York, and that was a big part of the retreat, that the whole aspect of meditation and just being able to just in some cases and just sit and be reflective. I remember when every time I came back from the retreat, I would sit in at a certain time in the day when I was at the Miami Herald, I would stop what I'm doing, get up from my desk, and just sit on the chair in my office and just try to reflect, just to have a moment of peace, a moment of calm, particularly when you're covering stories, whether in Latin America, in the Middle East, and elsewhere, where things are very turbulent. It's nice to really be reflective, just have a moment of peace.
That is so powerful and so true. We know it's the truth because we've been lucky enough to experience this within, a lot of these events that we've been involved with. And I think we're going to end here with a final event where we all came together and University of Southern California. And where were we?
Right. We were at a board meeting, a board retreat, another retreat. This is a board retreat of the Peace Studio. This was our very first, I believe, Meredith, our very first board retreat, and we had it at the University of Southern California. And it was a great opportunity to meet the board members of the Peace Studio, and which is the
and the founders were there too. Some of the founders.
Exactly, the Peace Studio and IVOH. And as and as I'm looking at the picture, and there's some really terrific friends of Miami in that picture. Of course, beyond the two of us, but people who've come down to show their support to the work that we've been doing down there.
Yeah, that was an absolutely beautiful weekend. And the ones that I recognize, of course, are Judy Rogers, the founder of Images and Voices of Hope. You probably know some of the other, Thomas West, the executive director of the Peace Studio, Todd Schuster, one of the founders of the Peace Studio, Roberta Baskin, who has been on the board and active with both organizations, an amazing woman. And there's some other people, and I don't know their names, but you probably maybe could speak about a couple of them, just really, really accomplished journalists and artists. And I just don't know their names.
Yeah,
But
yeah, it's exactly accomplished in a number of different ways, and doing a number of things. And Todd and Jen, of course, are involved in.
Jen, oh yes, and also maybe just say who's the original founder of the Peace Studio.
Right, and
she's not there. She wasn't able to be there, but she lives in Hawaii.
Right, yeah, that's former President Barack's sister, and who has been a great guiding light for the Peace Studio and the work that we've been doing at the Peace Studio. So. It's a great group, and we had a really good time, not only talking about the work, the mission, and what comes next, but also getting to know each other. So that it was a great weekend. John, I have taken up so much of your time. I think I told you it would be about 15 to 20-minute interview. I think it's maybe an hour, but for me, every minute of this was just so amazing to get to talk with you. I just see you as somebody who really is, with all your talents and accomplishments, you're here to serve the world, especially at this time when the world needs you so much. We need more of you, John. That's if you could duplicate yourself like all over, I think the world would change very quickly with your caring, loving, respectful. You're always so respectful to everyone and so interested in everyone. And I just feel that, I know when I'm around you, it's just good things happen. And I know how everybody else wants to be around you as well. And I think I have to say goodbye now, or I'm going to be in a lot of trouble probably with your job. But we did get to talk a little bit about Politico and the impact it's had on the world in just a few years. It's new to this game, isn't it? Extraordinary, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
and we just had that massive scoop about the Supreme Court.
Mm-hmm.
It was the work. You're right. The work and the impact that we've had on journalism and certainly on politics is unparalleled.
I mean, all you have to do is turn on your computer, and there it is. The latest news, right, on what's happening in the world, comes right from Politico, and the respect that it has of really trying to convey facts that are all about truth, right, and not one side or the other side. And we'll have to get you on another time to talk about your specific daily work as the global editor. That would be a whole other program. But I thank you so much, John, as always, for just being the extraordinary human being and journalist that you are.
Thank you, Meredith. Thank you, Meredith. This has been really, really a thrill and a pleasure. Anytime.
See you soon. Okay. And I want to thank Mita Saxena, who is our technical director, and I would say helping to produce the Conversations with Friends, and does all kinds of things, everything that's needed at the Brahma Kumaris Meditation Center. So thank you, Mita.